policies are being tested like never before. But what does it all mean for you?
With a new administration and a new president in the White House trying to put an end to the war.
I didn't know the historical context, what the state of Israel means for them.
Join the fearless Ireti Bakare-Yusuf on Borderlines every Friday at 4 p.m. on Nigeria Info 99.3 as she dissects the biggest global events and their impact on world peace.
Those who are not familiar with Israel or the war itself would not know much about the group. Breaking the silence.
No spin, no propaganda, just deep insights and fearless conversations on the geopolitics shaping our world.
People who will call and start telling you about the Bible prophecy about America and everything. See, America is not in the Bible. There's some people who just share the ideology of, yes, we and these people, we are equal, but they can't speak up.
Borderlines on Nigeria Info every Friday at 4 p.m. The world is changed. Don't just watch, understand it. Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Good afternoon, Lagos, Nigeria, the diaspora, wherever you are listening to us from. My name is Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Welcome to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. We have an interesting, thoughtful, introspective, and incredibly challenging show for you today. Yes, indeed. I say that because my guest is that kind of guest. He is an independent Israeli political analyst and commentator. His research and his writings focus on Israel, Iran, and the politics of religion in the Middle East. His sharp, critical lens brings clarity to how power, strategy, and morality collide in this conflict, and why the struggle over truth and justice is as important as the battle on the ground. My guest, he's been here before, and I'm always happy to be in conversation with Dr. Ori Goldberg. Ori, welcome. How are you?
I am as well as might be expected, and I'm very happy to be back. We always have very interesting conversations.
Yes, we do, and I can imagine, of course, it is as best as expected because the circumstances are looking more and more dire every single day, and one wonders where it's going to stop and where the end is. But let's talk about the man in charge, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who we all know is fighting for political survival. Now, to what extent is the continuation of this what is now generally agreed as a genocide, and I think we are within our rights, you might disagree to call it a genocide. To what extent is the internal politics shaping what's going on, the atrocities, the murders of journalists, which we'll talk about later, the aggression, the unprecedented aggression that we're seeing in Gaza?
I fully agree that this is a genocide. Let's begin with that. I think perhaps the only country in the world where there is mass disagreement about calling it a genocide is Israel. I think all over the world, it's become quite accepted that Israel is perpetrating a genocide. As for the personal angle of Prime Minister Netanyahu, yes, of course, there are personal political considerations here. Of course, his hold on power is cemented by the continuation of this genocide. But I don't think this is, I don't think he's doing this specifically or exclusively for these reasons, or perhaps to give you a more elaborate answer, I think that as far as he's concerned, as far as a lot of other people are concerned, his political interests are similar to Israel's political interests. I mean, this isn't just a personal war that's being taken personally by himself and his confidants. They really do think that this war is the only way to go, and they see this war as offering a new way to look at Israel's status in the Middle East, a new way to define Israeli security, a new way to define Israel's global presence. All of it is actually there and not just a front for naked political interests.
What is that new way? Because it's interesting that you say that, a new way to define. What is that new way? Because if you ask those of us, who are relatively well read, not as well as you, but well read. When I say well read in the whole history and what we're seeing now, some would argue that what we are looking at is Prime Minister Netanyahu and his his right-wing coalition working towards the actualization of Ben Gurion's dream for greater Israel. Is that what you're referring to, or are you referring to something else?
It's a very good question, because I think at the moment you've got two fantasies that are being fulfilled for Israelis. There are those, and they are mostly religious, from the settler, hardcore right elements in this government, who are fantasizing about a greater Israel that is based on divine promise and divine redemption, a greater Israel that is based on a direct intervention of God in events on the ground, a greater Israel that is the spirit and the life of Zionism as they define it, of the Jewish national revival. That's certainly a part of it. But I think the great majority of Israelis don't share that fantasy. They have a different fantasy. You might see it as connected, but there's an important difference. The great majority of Israelis share a fantasy according to which there will come a day when we wake up in the morning and all the Palestinians have left. It doesn't necessarily involve killing them. It doesn't necessarily involve ruling them. It doesn't necessarily involve anything particular, but they need to leave. They need to not be there, because that is the only way Israeli Jews will not feel threatened, will be able to live their lives not under an imminent threat of war. And that is a fantasy that is shared by the great majority of Israelis, much more so than the fantasy of greater Israel. It doesn't amount to a different result on the ground. What Israel is doing right now is directed towards expelling forcefully as many Palestinians as possible and killing something on the average of 100 Palestinians a day, any more in over the term, by and through various other destructive policies. Israel is destroying Gaza. It's destroying all the cities and actually the standing structures in the Gaza Strip. But the fantasy that revolves around the disappearance of the Palestinians, or making the Palestinians go away, in a way, much more than the religious fantasy, that is the ultimate colonial fantasy. It is about making the land truly our own in the most immediate way by having any kind of indigenous challenge to our sovereignty simply disappear. The settlers, they're all for war. They're all for continuous war. The settlers see Israel's security as defined by constant war. This is now the time, they say, when Jews take their destiny into their own hands and they set out to fight. And they are prepared to fight for as long as it takes. And they're talking now, that their ideologues are talking openly about a war that will last a decade or 20 years, or as far as the eye can see. The great majority of Israelis aren't interested in that kind of war. The great majority of Israelis are interested in occupying this space alone.
And
they don't, please.
I've got to ask, and that's the curious thing, because how is it that the vast majority of Israel would think that they would be, to use your words, enjoy the land without actually acknowledging that you can enjoy the land as brothers, as one cohesive big country? Because indeed, it's the one thing that I keep saying to people. These are all Abrahamic religions. So I see them, for somebody who is not a religious person, I see them all as brothers. So I don't understand.
Well, you're perfectly right in not understanding. And I would even be more blunt and say in repudiating this kind of conceptualization of the issue, because it is reprehensible. And the truth is that Israel, ever since its inception, you mentioned our founding father, David Ben-Gurion, ever since its inception, without regard to the issue of greater Israel, yes or no, that was always a strategic question based on specific and contextual geopolitical conditions. But without regard to that, Israel saw itself as what it called a Jewish and democratic state. And that's not a coincidental order. Jewish comes first. Israel is a state for Jews. It's a state meant for Jews. It's meant as a safe haven for Jews. It's meant as a new beginning for Jews. It's meant as the epitome of the Jewish national revival. And you need to remember that Judaism is an elusive category. It doesn't necessarily easily lend itself to well-known national tropes. Because Jews didn't share a single land. Maybe they did in biblical times, but they haven't shared a single land in millennia. They don't necessarily share a single language except for a scriptural holy language. It's not obvious that Jews can find themselves, acquire the self-identity as a nation. And again, as the 20th century shows us, there are a lot of groups that found this sort of identity, often at the expense of the indigenous natives of the lands they chose to settle. I don't need to tell Africans the story. Africans know this as well as anybody. But the thing is, in Israel, the project persisted. It was always Jews first. And in that ways, there are a lot of similarities between Israel and South Africa. And it's not, again, coincidental that Israel has been found guilty of perpetrating the crime against humanity of apartheid. Israel is a segregated state. Israel is a racist state. Israel is a state that counts Jews above anybody else. Now, for decades and decades, we understood that we were not allowed to say out loud that we want to be alone, that we would always feel threatened if there was anybody else here. So we repressed that by building the mechanism of the occupation. We were in control in the middle of the only democracy in the Middle East, as we like to call ourselves. We sustained and maintained a military dictatorship, the likes of which the region had never actually known. And we thought that we were teaching the Palestinians their place. They would know where they're supposed to be, and that is completely subordinated to us. And we actually thought we were on our way to normalizing this, because right before October 7th, 2023, there was talk of a great normalization deal with Saudi Arabia that would have really placed the Palestinians in a permanent subordinate state. But then Hamas carried out its attack and shattered any notion of normalization. And the part that we had learned to keep quiet, the part that we knew it wasn't polite to say in proper company, the part about always keeping the Palestinians subordinated, that part became the normative mainstream. That's what we're saying right now. We're not just saying that, we are raising the stakes. We're saying we're not just going to keep you in your proper place, we're saying we're going to kick you the hell out of here.
Indeed.
So that's how and why most Israelis find themselves capable and willing of saying we want to be here alone.
Before I go on, I have so many questions. I've got to ask you something. And I don't know those of you who are watching on YouTube. You must be watching Nigeria Info 99.3 FM. Ori, I've got to ask you, how are you? Because I'll tell you why I say that. When I'm talking to you, I'm giving you pure eye contact. And my soul goes out to you because I can see, I can feel, I can sense the heaviness. There are Israelis like Ori who are in Tel Aviv. And it must feel so, everything you've said now about your state, the place where you come from. I wouldn't even dare say that about Nigeria, I promise you. All of Nigeria would want me out, and I'm a Nigerian. They would be demanding that I be deported. But here you are. You feel that sense of, that moral sense, that responsibility for another. What is it like being Ori and being like Ori right now? I've got to ask you that, and I'm so sorry.
No, thank you for asking, Ireti. I'm touched that you see and you care and you ask, and I'm very happy to answer. I would divide my answer into two parts. As far as my public status goes, I'm not under any kind of real threat. And the reason I'm not under any kind of threat or feeling the consequences of saying what I'm saying is that the uniformity of thought in Israel is such at the moment that I'm not considered treasonous. I'm considered insane.
Wow.
You know, most people will listen to what I say and what people like me, and I would assume we number, I don't know, 5 to 10,000 people who speak out clearly, something like that. Less so on a continuous basis, but probably that number of people hold opinions similar to mine. We're not considered a threat, we're just considered crazy. Because obviously, why would we think what we think unless we were completely without any kind of connection to reality? And because that's the case, most people don't feel a need to argue with us. And many of us don't feel a need to argue publicly. There's no political debate that's going on in Israel now. There are many smaller debates that are about purely domestic issues, but about the genocide, there is really no debate. Everybody, in different ways, but just about everybody, either enables it or supports it or celebrates it or, is reticent about it. But when pushed, will say, I know it's bad, but what else can you do? That's what the great majority of people are saying. So they save themselves the aggression, and they don't talk to people like me. People like me will find it easier to speak with people like you than to be invited to speak on Israeli public radio or on Israeli television. They don't want to listen to us, and because there are so many of them and so few of us, it's their game, it's their market. They control what it is. So I'm not under any kind of threat. I can say what I want. I'm usually dismissed as insane. Personally, on a more personal level, it's not easy. I know people who have ended relationships that lasted years with friends. I know people who are not speaking to their families. I know people who've made a conscious decision to refrain from speaking about politics when they're in the presence of anybody they know. I know in my case that I try to refrain from being in crowded places because I can't even listen to the chatter. I can't listen to the small talk because the small talk is either so completely in denial of what's happening, which always strikes me as crazy, or it is in its way supportive of what's happening. Sure, we got to go there. We have to finish what we started in 1948. If we don't do it, it won't be done. This is our problem now. And even though we have to fight for 300 days a year, we'll do it till it ends, but I can't hear it. So I run my errands as early in the morning as I can in an attempt to avoid sitting in offices and listening to small talk. Wow. And I guess everybody who shares my opinions finds their own way. Some are angry, some adopt the more elusive strategies I adopt. It's about survival, so everybody does whatever works for them.
Thank you so much for that honesty. Let's talk about, let me read this out. Last Friday, I think it was after we finished the show, the IPC said that, Gaza City and the surrounding areas are experiencing a phase 5 famine, which is the highest level of acute food insecurity. Firstly, two things. One, as I know Israel keeps denying it, and they say there is no famine, and they will tell you that Hamas, indeed, the Israeli ambassador said, Hamas is the one stealing the food. He said it on this show, etc., etc. But how is it that, again, I have to go back to religion here. And as I've said to somebody, I've said it to people before, the Jewish religion that I knew in England, And I was growing up in England, and I grew up in Northwest London. So you can imagine, Goldberg Green. I grew up eating challah bread. That was my favorite. I would queue up for it, right? Bagels and everything. So the religion and its culture, is not za'atar is my favorite croissant. Is not it isn't oblivious, or it's not alien to me. So the Jewish religion that I knew, and indeed I worked as an estate agent briefly for a Jewish family. So the Judaism that I know is about getting together, eating, family, community. How does Israel become the country that is now imposing starvation on a people that they are not only genociding, but they're also occupying? How? Where? I don't understand.
I do. And you said you had the Israeli ambassador on your show. It's not only starving and occupying and perpetrating a genocide. It's also lying so brazenly about it. It's denying reality that everybody can see what's happening. When Israelis say, when Palestinians present images of a child who is completely emaciated, who obviously died from malnutrition, and Israelis say, well, he had cerebral palsy. We didn't starve him to death. He died because of a pre-existing condition. And they say it as a defense. That's horrible. That's horrible on a human level. It's not, but that's just me ranting. Look, when the State of Israel was established in 1948, and when Zionism became a powerful movement several decades before, but more specifically in 1948. 1948, that was, and the Holocaust and the Second World War, but 1948 specifically, that was unprecedented in Jewish history. We may have had biblical kingdoms, but nobody really knows what happened in the biblical kingdoms, what kind of Judaism there was in the biblical kingdoms. Jews had not existed as within a sovereign Jewish state for millennia, if we accept the reality of the biblical kingdoms. And until 1948, being Jewish meant several things. It meant being different than a lot of the people around you, at least religiously. It meant a great reliance on togetherness and community and solidarity. It's not coincidental that so many prominent socialist intellectuals all over the world were Jews, because Jews appreciated community and solidarity. And it was all about the less formal mechanisms that tie human beings together. Why? Because that was what Jews had at their disposal politically. That was how Jews ensured not just their survival, but their moral significance, their political relevance. This was the side on which they found themselves. After Israel was formed, Israel went almost completely the other way. I mean, in name, our founding fathers were socialists. But actually what happened is that we got hooked on the pleasures and joys of sovereignty. It wasn't about community anymore, certainly not as a universal value. It was, if it was anything, about our community. And it wasn't even just about our community, because it very clearly became apparent that we engaged in power politics with the best, most autocratic states in existence. Because that was what we were. We were a sovereign nation state. And the Israeli state, we've always been very close-knit. There's always been a community here, but it's also always been very racist. Our founding fathers were European. When Jews from Arabic-speaking countries of North Africa came to Israel after 1948, they were, most of them were good bourgeois with decent education and sometimes professional degrees. They were treated like animals. They were herded and placed in settlements that had been erected overnight on Israel's borders to physically defend the country from a potential invasion. They worked in the fields. They worked in factories. big families, clannish type families were broken up by the European state because the European state saw them as a threat to the coherence of the Ashkenazi, as we call them, the European-born state of Israel. So we became a state, and that was a major, major sea change for Jews. We effectively lost all of those things that you're talking about. And it wasn't just solidarity. It wasn't just a sense of a global bond. It was also intellectualism. Jews had always been very prominent intellectuals and scholars because that was a universal republic to which we could belong. But in our state, for a while, it continued. There was a slate of Nobel laureates that were Israeli. We're not going to be producing a Nobel laureate anytime soon because we are invested in the mundane aspects of acquiring power and maintaining it. So Jewish existence changed radically after Israel was formed, and that is why Israel can do things that you would have never seen growing up in Northwest London.
Indeed. The E1 plan. Suddenly, Western countries who had enabled, we have to be honest, Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right coalition, the Western countries, leaders, in fact, we're at the point where we call them rulers now because the vast majority of their citizens are against what they're doing, yet they're going ahead and still doing it. So I think it's fair enough that one can call them rulers, as they would often say about African leaders. So European rulers who had previously enabled Prime Minister Netanyahu and his far-right coalition suddenly woke up, found their conscience, stuck it back and said, look, okay, you've killed enough Palestinians. We don't want enough, all our ties, all our white shirts is full of blood. We don't want any more blood. We can't afford the dry cleaning. Stop killing, otherwise, and that was the thing. Stop killing, otherwise we will recognize the two-state solution. I mean, I need you to talk about the absurdity of that, or is it me? I have a friend who often listens to this and he'll say like, Ireti, you're putting words in his mouth. So let me not put words in your mouth, because I don't know why he thinks that, but he's quite bizarre, that friend of mine. In any event, we heard that. And then within a matter of days, a day, 2 days, we hear of the E1 plan. Unpack both of them together because the Palestinians are really now afraid.
Yeah, I'll just say a word about what the E1 plan is for those of your listeners or watchers who don't know. The E1 plan is the nuclear bomb of settlement approval in the Palestinian territories. It's the approval of building thousands of apartments and housing units for Jews on a stretch of land that would effectively dismember any future Palestinian state. That would cut off access to the capital of a future Palestinian state, which would be in Al-Quds or Jerusalem. So the approval of the E1 plan is Israel saying there will never be a Palestinian state as far as we're concerned, and we're just going to take the whole thing. And even if we haven't officially declared that we are annexing the Palestinian territories, the occupied territories, that is what that effectively means. So let's talk about it initially from the Israeli side. Israel is going for broke. I mean, there's no way to ameliorate that message. Israel has no choice. It will either demand complete sovereignty over the West Bank and ultimately over Gaza, even if it says that it's only going to be occupying it for a limited time. And perhaps most effectively, it will achieve the ability to, as I said previously, do whatever it wants, to whomever it wants, wherever it wants, whenever it wants, for as long as it wants, without paying any kind of price. Like what we're doing in Lebanon right now, like what we're doing in Syria right now. That's what we want. Okay, we don't necessarily need to stamp the official document. That's what we want. We want complete freedom of action and complete impunity. That's what we're going for. That's the jackpot as far as the Netanyahu government is concerned. So Israel is really just burning all of its bridges.
But who is going to stop them? Because if the world is truly serious, I mean, we're in September already, right? Are we not? Or we're in September next week, right? So the big UN General Assembly, where they've all said ceremoniously said they're going to be acknowledging, the Palestinian state, as if the state needed, at least as if somewhere that existed needed their acknowledgement. But indeed, let's move on. Right? So they said they're going to be acknowledging that. Yet you then have a Smotrich who says, no, whatever you plan, I'm doing this E1. And none of them have said anything. They still continue to sell arms to Israel. There is still relations going on with Israel. Indeed, the EU is the largest economic relations with Israel. They have the biggest trade. So who are we to believe? Are we to take them seriously or just laugh at them and just throw it away?
That is a great question, and it remains to be seen. There's no doubt, first of all, that the most criminal element of the world's behavior is the time it is taking to respond. Okay, the number of empty statements that are being issued from everyone without an actual response in the field. Now, people will tell you that it's not easy to activate the Security Council, to put peacekeeping forces on the ground, whatever. It's all true, and it's also true that the United States supports Israel and has now actively taken a stand with Israel. I heard it's denying the Palestinian Authority president entry to the United States, all sorts of things like that. That's definitely true. And it's true that the world has really taken its time to a criminal extent. What happens now is virgin territory. We've never been here. Israel has never been condemned as it already has, despite the fact that nothing has been done. And it remains to be seen what happens at the General Assembly, although that in itself will not necessarily bring an end to the genocide in Gaza and to the destruction in the West Bank. It's also true that Smotrich has talked but hasn't done anything yet. Okay, he's been given leave to issue the statements, but bulldozers are not breaking ground for the E1 housing units, and it's still standing there. Everybody's, the Israelis and the rest of the world, the European Union, the United Kingdom, even the United States, they're all playing a very elaborate game of chicken to see who steps aside first, who turns the steering wheel first. And Israel is playing for maximal stakes, because really Israel has nowhere to go, has no maneuvering room anymore. Either Israel gets what it wants or it doesn't. I would assume Netanyahu always has the option of ultimately saying, I tried my damnedest, but I had to stop. He could justify it also by signing a hostage deal with Hamas. Because after all, he has been obfuscating that issue for so long and so loudly. Nobody in Israel remembers what Israel wants anymore or what has been defined in the national interest. So he can come out and say, all right, I'm signing the deal. Because Hamas has accepted everything. It's accepted a partial deal. It's accepted a full deal. It's accepted every proposal that was laid on the table. Israel has not. So Netanyahu can now say, I finally found a deal I like. I'm signing the deal. Let's end the war. He can do that. If he understands that the sky is going to fall down on his head internationally, he can do that. So that's also a very possible scenario. He doesn't care anymore. At that level, all he cares about is his own survival. And if he signs a deal, there's a very good chance that he would win a snap election called in Israel. So
isn't that interesting? So it's possible that he could win if he signs the deal with Hamas. Because Hamas have said, look, we'll release the hostages. You get out of Gaza. We will get out of the Gaza government or the governance of Gaza structure. And as long as the Palestinians get to choose who they want, we're happy to be hands off. But we can't be hands off as long as you are there and as long as you're continuing to lord it over us with militarily and everything. So if it's true that Benjamin Netanyahu could win a snap election if he were to agree to the Hamas deal, why then is he not?
Well, because he could also potentially win a snap election if he doesn't agree. That's also on the cards.
Yes.
Because because the truth is that a lot of Israelis, I mean, you see hundreds of thousands of people protesting, calling for an end to the war and protesting against him personally. And I think we talked about this the last time I was here, but it's worth mentioning again. A lot of people don't like him, and rightfully so. It's important to mention he's under indictment for 4 counts of criminal felonies, and he's generally considered occupied exclusively with his own political status and survival. But while a lot of people don't like him personally, see his government, rightfully so, as the worst government Israel has ever had, those people, if they are called up to fight in Gaza, will report for duty. Okay? They will not shut down the country over the genocide. They will not refuse to carry out their combat assignments. They will not do everything in their power to end the war. What they want is the hostages returned. Now, there are less than 20 living hostages. So very soon now, if this continues, then the hostages will no longer be an issue. But what I'm saying is that while people publicly protest against Netanyahu, effectively they are validating him and his government by enabling, allowing, supporting the genocide.
Right.
As long as the genocide is not condemned by the majority of Israel's population, and it will not be condemned, then Israel's population ultimately enables the Netanyahu government to stay in power for an unlimited period of time. And that effectively means that if a snap election were called, he might win regardless of anything.
Indeed.
I mean, he stands a very good chance of winning if he comes back with a deal, but he might also win if he doesn't sign a deal, because he will fight till the bitter end. There's no telling. And that is a really important point as far as I'm concerned. It's understanding that Israelis don't like Netanyahu, they're not happy with the war, they feel it's being mismanaged, they feel the government is bad, but they are not opposed to the genocide.
Okay. Let's talk about, oh God, I'm running out of time. Ori, I could talk to you for 2 hours. One of these days, we're going to have to book you for Q&A for 2 hours, honestly.
No problem at all.
Excellent. Right. My producer's listening. You can hear that because, perhaps we'll do it soon, actually. I've got something, an idea just popped into my head. We've seen, an increasing, the number of journalists in Gaza. Killings, murders, assassination. It is why I'm wearing this t-shirt today, because we're all wearing it, all us journalists, we're wearing it in solidarity with our colleagues in Gaza and indeed in the West Bank. But here's what I want to talk to you about. What most people don't know is, yes, when Israel kills journalists in Gaza, everybody hears about it. But when Israel actually arrest journalists and put them in administrative detention, nobody hears about it. There's some 60-odd journalists or so. What is it? Why is it that Israel wants to silence journalists? So administrative detention, tell our viewers, I'll give you 2 minutes to answer that. Tell our people, who don't know what it is, so I don't have to tell them before I'm accused of putting word in your mouth. Tell them what it is, and then, yes, answer the question, please, within 2 minutes so I can move on.
Sure. Yeah. Administrative detention is basically the authority to arrest a person for as long as you want without due process.
Oh, the line's gone.
That's all that's required.
Yeah.
So the reason, again, is that Israel has no reason to be nuanced. Israel has, for the duration of this genocide, done everything in the most extreme, most overt, most blunt way that it can. And silencing the journalists is easy, because in Israel now, nobody thinks they were journalists. Everybody buys the military and the security services version that they were terrorists. So why not kill them? Indeed. The world is incensed. Who cares about the world? The mainstream media in the West reports the Israeli story as though it was the scientific default.
Okay.
Everywhere else, Palestinians are killed, but nobody says by whom. So Israel kills. It's easier, it's simpler, and it allows Israel to do whatever it wants much more effectively and much more broadly.
Thank you. Right. All of a sudden yesterday, and tell me if I'm wrong. Can you hear me? You can't hear me. Can you hear me, Ori? I can hear you.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Well, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, it kept going in and out. So very quickly,
Okay.
because they're telling me I've got 10 minutes left or something. Can you imagine 10 minutes left with you? It's gone so fast. So here's the thing. 2 days ago, there was supposed to have been a meeting in the White House, and Tony Blair of WMD Lies. Tony Blair was supposed to be part of the Blair Foundation or the Blair Institute, whatever it is that it's called, and no Palestinians or no representative of Palestine was actually in that meeting. What can we expect? What do you think they were talking about? What do you think was agreed? Was it a case of dividing Gaza into, you take that bit and you take that bit? Or was it a real meeting that was looking at proper Palestinian-driven solution? I shouldn't have said that, but yeah.
No, that's okay. I think it was probably a little bit of everything and maybe one other thing. And that is, look, Trump divides the world between two types of people, winners and losers. And as far as Trump is concerned, Tony Blair is a winner. So is Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who was
also there. Yes.
What he wants from those winners, and remember that there would have been very few Western leaders who would have been willing to be seen with Trump exclusively in the White House at the time. What Trump wants is advice on whether Netanyahu is a winner or a loser. I think that's what he wanted explained to him.
Interesting.
Because as things are so far, Trump has decided that Netanyahu might win. And if he might win, there'd be things in it for the United States, so he's willing to let Netanyahu progress. But it's very likely, and I think there are already signs, that Trump is beginning to look at Netanyahu and see a loser. And I think what he wanted was very direct political advice on what Netanyahu is and what his prospects are. And in that sense, Tony Blair might actually be qualified to provide such advice. It's true.
Would Tony Blair call Netanyahu a loser, though?
No, he wouldn't call Netanyahu a loser, but he would describe the political situation to Trump in a way that would make it obvious that Netanyahu was a loser. Netanyahu had no options, no choices so far.
Okay. You can call very quickly 0201 277 0993. The other line is 0201 465 7190. You should have been sending your messages to the WhatsApp 0809 597 5805. I'll be picking up your calls right now. If you don't call, I get more chance to talk to Ori. Ori, so after that, we then suddenly started hearing about Iran again. Hold on to that thought, because the question I want to ask you is was that a deflection? Was that to distract us? Let me answer this call and I'll come to you. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Sisi Oge.
Good afternoon. What's your name? Where are you calling from, please?
Well, my name is Engineer Kundayo. I've been listening to Ori's and your discussion.
Go ahead, very quickly, sir.
As per the meeting in U.S. With Tony Blair and Trump, the foreign minister of Israel, after the meeting, said that there will be no Palestinian state. Okay, so my question
have you heard it? Has it come out? Because I was going to say I haven't heard anything.
I heard it. I heard it from foreign news.
Okay.
I heard it and it's confirmed.
Okay.
Now, so my question is, now if there is no Palestinian state, and with the frame of mind of Netanyahu, how would Israel administer Palestine?
Okay, thank you. I haven't heard that, but that's Mr. Kundayo who says he's heard it. I don't know how far true that is, that after the meeting, it was said that the Israeli foreign minister said there will no longer be a Palestinian state. I'm not sure I believe that. Zainab, please do the needful. But go ahead, Ori. And he asked a very good question. If that were true, and it's not too far out, if that were true, what would Israel do with Palestine, Gaza? 1 minute.
Annex it and occupy it. Make it a full apartheid regime.
And then what would they do to the people?
They would make them subjects, not citizens. They would put them under military occupation, or they would put the military into the territory, and they would be willing to discuss a change in their status 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 years from now.
Wow.
But, military occupied.
Okay. I have a question here from, I don't know, Ifeanyi, who said, ask your guest if Nathan Benjamin Netanyahu will ever take responsibility of the events that happened on October 7th. But history will never forget these atrocities Israel is doing now, just as the Holocaust, which is still relevant on people's minds today. That's from Ifeanyi. Hold on to that, Ori. I will come to you. Hello. Hello, very quickly. Hello. We have no time. Hello. Good evening, Emmanuel. Very quickly, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I think the Israelis are doing systematic killings.
Speak up louder.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the Israelis are doing systematic killings of the Palestinians so that they will leave the land. Because they are hinting that, Palestinians are free to leave if they want to leave, just putting fear into them. Now, does your guest see that even if the Palestinians leave the land, will the Israelis have peace? Yes, because they have issues with Syria, they have issues with Egypt.
Okay, yeah, you've said it. I get it.
And so on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So he's saying pretty much the same thing. Do you think if you force the Gazans, the Palestinians out of the land, does Israel think they're going to have peace? Number one. Number two, the other question from Ifeanyi was, would Benjamin Netanyahu ever take responsibility for the event of October 7th? And I asked about, is Iran, this new noise about Iran, is it a distraction?
Let me start with your question. Iran is a distraction. It was a distraction the first time as well. It was always an attempt to deflect attention from Gaza. About Netanyahu's responsibility, in a way, it's difficult for me to say, but Netanyahu is responsible because he was prime minister at the time, but it wasn't his mistake or his approach. This is the way the Israeli system is constructed. If anyone is responsible, it's pretty much everybody who's ever held official office in Israel when it comes to defense. So this is about the Israeli state in particular. I hope Netanyahu will be arraigned and indicted, and I hope he's charged and found guilty, but it isn't on him exclusively. As for will Israel have peace? Peace is a meaningless word now. This isn't a war. It doesn't end with the two sides acceding to peace. And anyway, Israel doesn't want peace. Israel wants freedom of action. Israel doesn't want stability. Israel wants instability. So it's a less relevant question.
Now, before I'm thrown off air, I've got to ask you, because I know that you are an expert in the religion, and I mean, this is the Holy Land, as they call it. What message do you have for Christian Zionists? We have a lot of them in Nigeria. We have these pastors who stand on the pulpit and preach Zionism. Well, they say they're preaching Israel, not knowing that they're preaching Zionism. Incidentally, there's the occasional, ever so tiny Muslim Zionist as well. So I would like you to, so let's call them religious Zionists. What message would you give to religious Zionists? I'm going to give you 2 minutes, right? I've got 2 minutes I can spare. Yeah.
I would ask Christian Zionists to really go back to the American four-letter formula, the WWJD. What would Jesus do? And I have no doubt that if they look into their hearts, they will easily find that Jesus would never condone the sort of thing that Israel is doing now on two fronts, not just the denial of humanity that comes about by constant bombing and killing and starving, but the denial of reality, the refusal to take responsibility, the gross immorality of Israeli behavior here. Again, not just when it comes to the death of Palestinians, but when it comes to the rejection of reality, to doing things and then saying you simply haven't done them. That is not moral behavior, and it should not be condoned, and it should not be accepted. It is a threat to every kind of order. It is a threat to every kind of solidarity, which is at heart important to both Islam and Christianity, because they are global religions. They know no borders. And if they, again, look into their hearts and try and connect with the human inside there, that they will see that what Israel is doing now, which is a direct result of the dehumanization of the Palestinians, is ultimately what is taking place, is that Israel is becoming inhuman as well. And if they are human beings, and if they are worshippers of God, whatever God they worship, Israel is not their friend.
Dr. Ori Goldberg, he has become a friend. He's part of the show. I promise you I will be getting Dr. Goldberg back. I think we need him for 2 hours so you guys can do a Q&A and stop arguing with me, right? You'll have an expert in the hot seat, right? It's part of what with the new thing we're going to be starting soon. So we'll be talking to Dr. Goldberg about that. Ori, thank you so much. And honestly, my heart goes out to you. I send you love. I send you healing. It's a heavy burden that you're carrying. I wish you well, my brother.
Thank you very much, Ireti. It's a pleasure and an honor, and I very much appreciate your words just now. We all need to be generous in spirit. This is a good time to do that.
Thank you.
So till next time.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Be part of the discussion. It's Borderline.
On 99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria